compact man, probably no more than 5'6", with his muscular frame rounded off by layers of cold-weather dress. His outer shell was a light, mottled gray pattern that blended with either rock or blown snow. He was wearing a light combat load and watch cap. Like the seal beside him, he was lying on his thinsulite ground pad, the same pad he'd slept on the previous night in the snow cave. It was early afternoon, with the sun full up, but partially blocked by mountain peaks that cast shadows into the valley below. The temperature was still in the teens at the team's location, but they had purposely set their perch where it would always be in the shade. It was colder, but there was no chance of reflected sunlight to disclose their position. "Think he'll show today, Senior Chief?" Nakamura asked.
"Today, tomorrow, who knows? Hopefully before our chow and batteries run low. It'll all depend on the weather."
He looked at the long valley shadows to gauge the angle of the sun.
"Today might be as good as any."
The Senior Chief Petty Officer lying next to Nakamura also watched the compound in the shallow valley below, but his view was through the 22X scope married to a very long and sinister-looking rifle. Senior Chief Garrett Walker had been a Navy SEAL for close to 2 decades. As a young petty officer, he'd cut his operational teeth when his platoon went into Afghanistan right after 9/11. He was then deployed to Iraq ahead of the conventional forces during the Iraqi invasion. He had personally been at war with his nation's enemies ever since, primarily in the Middle East and Southwest Asia. Someone had once asked him, someone who was not a Navy SEAL, just how many of these enemies he had killed. His answer had been,
"Not nearly enough. There are still too many of them out there. But you can be sure that the ones I've put away had earned a bullet."
Unlike his shooting partner, Garrett Walker was a slim 6'2". He had wide-set green eyes, and his nose and cheekbones were punctuated by sharp, angular features. A shock of wiry brown hair peeked from under his rolled-up balaclava. The thick beard and mustache wreathed a tight, controlled mouth. Except for an occasional glance at the sky or the surrounding peaks, his cheek remained welded to the stock of the weapon as he watched through the scope. A short while later, he spoke in a low voice.
"Hey, Stanley, get the other guys ready to move. I think we might have a play."
Nakamura was watching the compound, as was his team leader, but he had seen nothing. Still, he rolled from his mat and made his way to the snow cave's entrance. Soon the other 2 SEALs were making their way out, blinking in the bright daylight. They carried their weapons and dragged their rucksacks behind them. Without asking questions, they immediately began prepping their gear for travel. This didn't take long, as SEALs on a covert mission like this had to be ready to move at a moment's notice. They returned to the cave and brought out Nakamura's and Walker's rucks. With the gear staged and ready, the 2 SEALs moved to either flank and took up security positions with their M4 rifles. What Garrett Walker had seen, but Stan Nakamura missed, was the slight movement of a man in the compound's small minaret. It was the call to prayer. On cold days, they prayed inside. When the sunlight touched the compound, as it did today, they often came into the courtyard to pray.
"They're coming out now," Walker said in the same low, measured voice. "Put the extraction bird on standby and let's get a solution."
Nakamura pulled a satellite phone from his vest and made a short call. At a small military outpost outside Jalalabad, 7 Special Operations airmen filed from their tent and made their way across a dirt strip to the lone MH-47 Chinook. The huge rotors of the aircraft drooped sadly as it sat waiting patiently for its crew. Soon the 2 turbines began to spool up, and the rotors, moving slowly at first, gradually gathered speed. The crew made their pre-flight checks and waited as the big helo stood ready, idling on the ground. Back at the shooting perch in Pakistan, Stan Nakamura and Garrett Walker began their ritual. If there was a